As you've heard on Bridge City News, the two Canadians who have been held for a number of months in China, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, have now both been officially arrested. Joining me now to discuss this, along with other big stories coming out of Ottawa, is our parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion. Ray, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he's doing everything in his power to help the two Michaels, but what does that entail?
Well, the Prime Minister was asked about it while he was in Paris on Thursday. He held a news conference there in the French capital, and it's not exactly clear exactly what he's going to do about this. Of course, as you know, for weeks there have been many calls by the opposition parties, by many other people, for the Prime Minister to pick up the phone and just call his Chinese counterparts. But, you know, for now, he's publicly condemning yet again what the Chinese have done. He's calling those arrests arbitrary. He said on Thursday that it's increasingly clear that the Chinese government is not following the same kinds of rules and principles that a large majority of democracies follow around the world. So he's trying to put some pressure on Beijing. But it looks like it's not yielding any results, at least not for now. And of course, the formal arraignment of those two Canadians who have been detained in China since early December, ever since Canada arrested Meng Wanzhou, the senior Huawei executive. Canada's woes with China have only been growing. As you know, two other Canadians have been sentenced to death, which is something Canada is also protesting. China is also blocking imports of canola. So, pressure is only building. The tensions are only going higher and higher between Ottawa and Beijing, and we don't know exactly what Ottawa is going to do to make things better soon.
So what have the two Michaels officially been charged with? Is it stealing state secrets?
Yeah, spying and crimes related to national security. This is what they're being charged with. People behind the scenes say it doesn't make any sense. We're sensing that it has... it's a way for China to retaliate following the arrest of Meng Wanzhou, the senior Huawei executive in Vancouver. So as long as Canada won't release her, which is not something the Canadian government is prepared to do, because Justin Trudeau keeps repeating over and over to China and to everyone else that Canada's judicial system is totally independent from the political system, doesn't look like China is willing to accept that.
Now, our Prime Minister has offered Canadian products for the rebuilding of the Paris Notre Dame Cathedral. Ray, how much lumber and steel are we talking about here?
Well, we don't know. I mean, there's lots of questions to be answered still. I asked the Prime Minister's office exactly how much this is going to cost, how much softwood lumber we're talking about here, how much steel. Right now, what I'm being told is just an offer that the Prime Minister made to the French President, Mr. Macron. He went, as you know, in front of the cathedral in Paris, which was devastated by a fire exactly a month ago, to offer Canada's help. And he mentioned Canadian softwood, Canadian steel. This is an announcement that he made in partnership with the industry, we're told, but we don't know exactly how much it's going to cost and who's going to pay for what. Is this something that the Canadian government is going to foot the bill for, perhaps in conjunction with the industry here in Canada? A lot of questions left to be answered where that offer is concerned. But at least Canada is doing something. The Prime Minister mentioned that it's not just a French monument that was heavily damaged by fire last month. It's a World Heritage Site, so at least he's showing that Canada is willing to do something about it.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer outlined his vision for the economy on Thursday. What did he have to say, Ray?
Well, he wants to scrap the carbon tax. No surprise there. He's been talking about it for many, many months. He wants to do away also with Justin Trudeau's economic policy, with one notable exception, which is the Canada Child Benefit, which is very popular with parents who have kids. As you know, they're getting tax-free money from the Canadian government. But one of the main takeaways from Mr. Scheer is his proposal of an east-west energy corridor. So more pipelines, more hydro lines, so that we connect both extremities, both ends of the country, so that Canada can become energy sufficient here. Mr. Scheer wants Canada to be an energy independent country with this east-west energy corridor. A move, he says, would make building pipelines and other energy infrastructure easier. So obviously, you're going to hear a lot of the opposition parties, the Liberals, but particularly the Greens and the NDP, who are against pipelines, attack that plan. But yeah, we're not done from hearing about that. This is a plan that Mr. Scheer plans to flesh out in the coming months leading up to the October election.
Let me tell you, as an Albertan, a native Albertan, want to hear more pipelines. Hey, I'm all for it, and especially a lot of my family who works in the energy sector here in our beautiful province.
It's a big debate across the country. I mean, you go elsewhere. I mean, in Western Canada, obviously, pipelines are very popular. Not so in British Columbia, not so in Quebec. It's a very sore subject right now, and Mr. Scheer is trying to win extra seats in the province of Quebec. The word pipeline has become toxic in that province ever since they had the big debate about Energy East. The premier over there, you'll recall what Francois Legault said just before Christmas. He says he doesn't want to have dirty oil, dirty energy from Alberta. So he says there's no social acceptability for another pipeline in Quebec. So this is probably a debate that's going to come to head in the next election campaign for
Absolutely.
sure.
You know, it's really interesting as well. A lot of the people I talk to in the energy sector say, yeah, we don't mind giving transfer payments to Quebec. Just let us earn our money first. That dirty oil money that you're just talking about, then we'll send you the millions of dollars, right? So anyway, we'll save that discussion, for another time. Ray, the Mark Norman controversy is not going away anytime soon, and now the feds are denying any role in the mess. And let me guess, they're blaming former Prime Minister Stephen Harper again?
Well, they wouldn't blame the previous Harper government, but this week, Justin Trudeau and his cabinet ministers repeated over and over again that they had absolutely no role in the decision to indict Mr. Norman. They say it was the role of the RCMP and solely of the RCMP to investigate. It is the Crown prosecutors who decide to lay a breach of trust charge against the former number 2 of the Canadian Armed Forces, Vice Admiral Norman. But, you know, some interesting things were said this week. In an interview with the CBC, former Conservative Defense Minister Peter MacKay revealed that Mr. Norman, Vice Admiral Norman, actually had the green light from the previous Conservative government to speak with the Davie shipyard in the Quebec City area. And this is very interesting because one of the things that he was accused of having done was to have leaked secrets, government secrets, to that shipyard. Now, if he had been given the go-ahead to speak with the shipyard, why was he charged with leaking government secrets to the Davie shipyard? And why didn't a former Conservative, go and talk to the Mounties or to the Crown prosecutors? I mean, the Conservatives this week responded, well, nobody asked us. It was the investigators' role to come to us and ask us about it. But for sure, some people, it looks to me like some people have some questions to answer. Is it the RCMP or the Crown prosecutors? It looks to me like someone didn't do a very thorough job in this case. Right.
Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland met with her U.S. counterpart Robert Lighthizer recently to talk about the U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. Ray, are the huge tariffs finally coming to an end?
Well, we're hearing some encouraging words from both the Mexicans and the Americans. Earlier this week, a Mexican official said the tariffs, which apply to Canadian steel and aluminum, but also to Mexican steel and aluminum, are about to be lifted. Then the next day, U.S. Commerce Secretary Steven Mnuchin told a Senate hearing in Washington that the tariffs could very soon be lifted. So, encouraging words. But the problem is Chrystia Freeland, who was in the American Capitol this week, she didn't sound so enthusiastic. She said talks are continuing. As you mentioned, she had a long discussion with U.S. Commerce, the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, and it looks like more discussions are still to be had. So it kind of looks to me like the U.S. is close to having a deal with Mexico, but maybe not Canada. Maybe they want something in return from Ottawa, which is perhaps not something Ottawa's willing to give the Americans. But it's encouraging, but it looks like we're not done there yet.
Child killer Terry Lynn McClintic is now suing the federal government. Is it because she wanted maybe more time at that Saskatchewan Healing Lodge? What are you hearing?
Yeah, it was a big controversy a few months ago when it was revealed that child killer Terry Lynn McClintic was actually spending time not in jail but at a healing lodge in Saskatchewan. And then she was later removed and sent back to jail. And Miss McClintic sent an application over the past couple of weeks claiming that The decision to return her to prison was unreasonable, procedurally unfair, and therefore unlawful. She said she suffered a loss of liberty by being returned to prison. However, just as the judge was about to rule on this motion from Ms. McClintic, it turns out she retracted her application. So it doesn't look like she's willing to sue the federal government anymore. She's back in prison. Looks like she's had a change of heart. And as you know, she won't be eligible for parole until 2031. So it doesn't look like Ottawa's being sued after all.
The feds are boasting about the current state of the Canadian economy. But you know, Ray, many would argue the turnaround of the economy has more to do with small and medium-sized businesses and not so much about Ottawa.
Yeah, some people are saying that. A lot of other people are also saying that Canada's economy is doing well right now because the American economy is doing extremely well. We see what's happening, obviously, south of the border, and whenever the economy there does well, it has a positive effect on this side of the border. But yeah, Statistics Canada, nevertheless, gave the Liberals some reasons to boast with their most recent employment numbers, those for April, which show that the economy added 106,000 jobs. That's the biggest one-month employment surge in Canada ever since Statistics Canada has been keeping stats, and they've been at it since 1976. But the reality is, whatever the cause for this, the Canadian economy is doing well at the moment, and that can only be good news for the government of the day. It's when the economy sours that the government of the day is in trouble. So far, so good. Good news for the Liberals.
Now, speaking of the Liberals, they're wanting to declare a federal climate emergency, and so did the NDP. Ray, what does that look like, a federal climate emergency?
Yeah, the battle of the motions this week in the House of Commons. First, the NDP tabled its motion, which is proposing to do away with subsidies to oil and gas companies. So according to the Liberals, that's going way too far. I don't have to tell you, obviously, what the Conservatives' position on this is. And then the Liberals also tabled their own motion to declare a climate emergency. What I think this is all about, it's just a political game. That's what it is, because we talked last week about the Green Party, which is doing extremely well, especially among people on the left who believe strongly that something drastic needs to be done about the environment. The younger generation is very pro-environment. So I think the NDP and the Liberals are sensing that right now. They're afraid that they might lose the Green vote, Elizabeth May's party. So I think that that's the reason why we have this battle of the motions this week in the House of Commons. And it's also a move on the part of the Liberals to try and put pressure on Andrew Scheer, which is yet to make his environmental plan public. Mind you, let me remind you once again that Mr. Scheer is promising to do so before the end of the spring. We're going to know exactly, we're told, what the Conservatives' targets for reducing Canada's greenhouse gas emissions will be.
Now, we all remember the Aga Khan controversy, Ray. It sounds like the Aga Khan Foundation is receiving a lot less money from the feds than it has in the past.
Absolutely. It's been cut almost in half, $24.8 million last year compared to $47.4 million in 2016-17 and $53.6 million the year before. So we're talking about much less money. The government says it has nothing to do with the Prime Minister's trip to the Aga Khan's private island from a few years ago, and the raking of over the coals that he got from the former ethics commissioner. Foreign Affairs saying it's just the normal cycle of business. It all depends on the project. Each group that they do business with is working on. Where the money is needed is where the money goes, basically, is what they're saying. They say that the Aga Khan Foundation remains a very important partner, even though it's getting much less money these days.
How about the over $200 million we're still giving to China, even though now Michael Kovrig and Michael Spaffer have been arrested?
Yeah, a lot of big debate on that. Yeah.
Our parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion, joining me once again from Ottawa. Thanks so much, Ray.
You're welcome, Hal.